Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee Class with Young Screenwriters. Today, we have someone very special joining us from his NYU office. Is it Adam? Who knows?
Is it Adam? Adam, where'd you get
this, guys? NYU paid a lot for this,
Today we're going to talk about character arcs in screenplays. And everything connected to that. So character, flaw, inner need, changing over the course of the story, like what it means to be an active protagonist, all the things that are connected to character arcs in a screenplay, which I know John has taught me a lot about.
Oh my God.
I know. I just added the pressure. I paused for a moment because I'm like, can he handle that pressure?
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll find out. Will he fail? Will he fall?
Mm-hmm.
We'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
See where it goes. Pressure's on.
So I have a question just to sort of get the ball rolling. So when people say character arc, this is like a term I feel like is used very casually, sometimes with like only partial understanding of like what that actually means as like an emotional experience in a story, right? And I'll just throw out what I think is like the number one sort of issue I see when people like think they have a character arc, think they have the emotional transformation, but it's like not really hitting the mark. And it's when the flaw and the inner need just sort of feels like an attribute or characteristic that's kind of just like, oh yeah, they're selfish. And at the end, they're selfless.
Mm-hmm.
What's your experience with that dimension of like partial understanding, or like what's your experience of flaw? And whatever.
My
yeah, John. Yeah, what do you think I just said?
John, okay. What are your flaws?
Oh, we don't have time.
No, let's not get into that.
We'll be here until midnight. It's such a good question. It is one. I think you're absolutely right. It's one of the areas in screenwriting that is overlooked or not given enough thought. And this sounds like a little hyperbolic, but the resolution is really all we care about. That third act, has he or she changed? That's really all we care. After we've gone through this incredible journey in the second act and creating obstacles and done all that, what we care about is not really if they achieved the objective, but it's does the protagonist change? And this takes some kind of deep understanding about character, but also, and I with students in particular, with students, no fault of their own, they're just too young to have the maturity to understand and to really have a deep understanding of character. And so I'm going to go off a little bit, Adam, off.
No, go. That's just priming.
But one of the things that strikes me, again, working with students, having a deeper understanding of your protagonist is where it's going to start. That's where the guts of it is going to be. And that requires some maturity, some age, and some objectivity about who people are. And I would say if there's one catch phrase that I would say in terms of learning and understanding and have a deeper understanding of people, it's listen. Listen. My students, again, are at an age when they should be completely self-involved. And by God, they are. But that's okay. It's no fault of theirs. It's a time when you should be self-consumed. But once you can start listening to people, that's where the complexity is. And people will tell you more about themselves than they ever should. And in that, you can start to take pieces and build character and do what we call composite character design. So you take a little piece from this, a little piece from that. And it's all over the place. It's everybody. It's literally everybody you talk to. They will give you some information in conversation about themselves. And the sooner you can pull back and listen and be discerning and objective about what they're saying, the better you have an understanding as to their motivations, because it all comes from motivation. What do they, when they speak, what are they really trying to say? What's the sublime? Because when from right after hello, how are you? Generally speaking, we're trying to send a message. I want you to know who I am. And this is how I'm going to let you know. So that's where, when you start to break that down, first of all, it's fascinating because it's human nature. I mean, it doesn't, I've said this before, it doesn't get any richer than that. It's human nature. What do people say? Why do they say it? How are they motivated? And you need that kind of understanding to bring it to your protagonist and to build the protagonist. A quick anecdote. My wife and I, we were out on vacation a few weeks ago, and I got an email from a guy I knew in college. Hadn't talked to him in 30 years. I don't know how he found me. And he called, and so he sent me, and I said, okay, I'll call you. And I called him. His name's Larry. And Larry, what you been up to? And this is what I'm talking about. Then maybe you won't find it. I found it fascinating. So Larry, what have you been doing? He said, well, when I left college, I went to Vegas, and I'm a bookmaker. And for those of you who don't know, that means he makes he's a betting guy. So if you say so-and-so and so-and-so is playing this Saturday, he'll tell you who to bet on. And he created a business, and he did that for 35 years. Never married, lived in Vegas. Now he lives in Florida. And at one point he said, you have children? I said, yes, school teacher, one who works in a gallery, da, da, da. And he said, oh, gallery. He said, well, I've got 1,000 paintings. I've got 1,000 paintings. Okay, Larry, okay. So and then I say, he said, what do you do? I said, well, we're on vacation, so I'm reading a book, do what I do. I've got 100 books. I'm wondering how big his apartment is, because he got 1,000 paintings and 100 books. And I put them biographies, and then economics and sports and history and mystery, and I have them all. So the guy was fascinating and kind of heartbreaking. And at the end, so I said, Larry, listen, this has been great talking to you. And he said, oh, well, shit, you got to go. I said, yeah, I got to go. He said, well, I got to talk to you about something. So I said, okay. I said, well, I've got to go. We should catch up again. And I'm add him back to my Flaw. I haven't gotten back to him. But he said, he said, I said, I'll get back to you. But I would bet anybody will take this bet. Here's the bet. I'll bet you $20 that he has a movie idea.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I mean, that's a long way of saying Larry is a fascinating guy. And the insecurity of that guy and what he's saying to me, I got 1,000 paintings, got 100 books, blah, 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 was really interesting. And curiosity killed the cat. I mean, curiosity is going to kill me, because I will call the guy back. I'm dying to know I'm dying to go down that rabbit hole. So that's just character stuff. But Larry, I was never, I mean, I think you could say that he was never intentionally saying, I'm opening my chest and revealing myself. He was never saying that. He was saying, he hung up, and he felt pretty good, I would guess, and I hope it's true. He felt really good about that conversation because he got to communicate his painting collection and his book collection, and and it was kind of painful. It was kind of, but is that? I mean, again, that's character, that's human nature. It was just 35 years, and boom, there he is, and that to me. Never married, spends his life betting on games and knowing who to bet on, and lives alone now somewhere in Florida. That's rich. That is rich. Adam, did I lose? I mean, is that not
no,
rich?
No. Well,
that's rich character for me.
But here's the thing: like, it comes down to listening, right? Which we
comes down to listening.
Like, you have to. And if you don't listen to how people express themselves, the second level of what you're saying, I've got 1,000 paintings, and your characters aren't having that level of like emotional depth too. Like, you have to listen to your characters and listen to the world to sort of know how people express themselves. That's kind of what I'm interpreting, which I think is like, I think actually kind of a roundabout way of addressing, like, when a flaw is just an attribute, it's not a deep lived experience or like an emotional like truth. Like I'm actually of the opinion that like the flaw inner need is often best like written as like a really powerful sentence, a belief of the character. Like, I'll never be loved enough unless I buy the house, right? Like writing that out for the sentence, like finding, and in the character's voice sometimes, like just to understand the kernel of like, oh, what are they really about? I feel like you have to go deep with that. You can't just sort of say selfish,
Yeah. And I mean, flaw is like something that occurred to me, John, too, is that your strategy, like, you come back with all these people you have to talk to. And I could imagine that those conversations might be incredibly difficult for other people. But I feel like you're able to be like, wow, this is a character. And then all of a sudden it becomes like this really entertaining experience of you trying to figure out who this character is. So it's a good, maybe something I'll keep in mind when I'm on a long call in the future. But also, wait, there was a question that I wanted to bring up. Anyway, go ahead. You all can keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I got to look in. Oh my God, the comment. Hello. I didn't.
Popular guy, John.
What?
You're a popular guy, John.
Oh my God, it's frightening.
So can we talk for a second?
Wait, here's somebody who says, "I hope Miss Professor Warren delivers." We're all hoping the same thing. Absolutely. I missed you guys too. Thank you. John was going to say it. Larry died after the phone call.
That's what I wanted to put. Me and Carl were watching. We're watching Vivo. I don't know if you've seen it yet. It was one we did in coffee class. Like, was it last week? Very recently. That Lin-Manuel Miranda animated feature. And
oh yeah,
in the beginning, the little monkey character was looking awfully close with the old man, and Carl's like, John's ruined me because that man's gonna die. That man is dead. And sure enough, there he went, dead.
I'm sorry, Carl. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, now I remember kind of what I was gonna say. I feel like a lot of times, especially in the first passes and things too, people put flaw in like the text and the dialogue, but not necessarily in the subtext. And like that's where I feel like you end up getting stuff that's really powerful, is like, instead of being like, hey, I'm insecure, it's I have 1,000 paintings, it's
that's a great
example,
like that.
John. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to say that using this information, and you will know more about your character, the protagonist, whoever we're talking about here, could be the antagonist, but then you're going to put on the page. One of the things that's great about listening and doing this kind of, if you can call it study, is that you realize the fragility of human nature. You realize how fragile people are. And somewhere in those conversations, they are they will illuminate what their great need, Adam said this a moment ago, I think, but what their need is, what their need, and because we all have it, you know, and in that vulnerability is their inner motivation. And I mean, that's what makes, you know, Richard III such a brilliant character in King Lear, and, you know, I mean, it's Shakespeare, so it's a different guy altogether writing this stuff. But, you know, God, to know those people, and that's where you want to end up. It's not an easy thing. And Alexi, yes, it's not as simple as saying, and the flaw is she's selfish.
Right.
Well, the flaw is she's selfish because she's the middle child, and her older sister was a superstar, and her younger sister was the most beloved, and there was nowhere that she fit into the world. Mm-hmm. And so she fucking hates her siblings. Now you're starting to talk, right? Now you're starting to say she resents the adorable younger child. She hates the superstar eldest child because she's got nowhere to fit. Then you can start to build a character.
So would you say that flaw is connected to want?
Yeah. I think sometimes, I mean, well, that's a little broad, but
no, but like just like in a simple way, like in a character's normal world, when we meet them and we introduce, like, okay, who's this person? What's it about? How are they fucked up? Usually I think that it's very common, at least, mm-hmm. maybe through just utility of storytelling in movies, that the great unmet need they have in their life, when we meet them, is connected to how they're fucked up. Like Woody in Toy Story, he wants to be Andy's favorite toy more than anything, to the point where he's kind of a controlling, you know, egocentric fuck, you know. Sorry for language.
Yeah, but that, and in that neediness is their true motivation. Mm-hmm. So Larry, I'm going to shut up about Larry for a second, but Larry, when we talk again, and we're going to talk again because now I'm eager, but when Larry pitches his movie idea to me, which is probably based on Larry, he didn't get in touch with me out of the blue. It was calculated. He had to find me. So Adam, yeah, his need, and ultimately, if I know Larry, I'm pretty sure I do, it's to extract cash. Right?
So we could have 10,000 paintings.
So worried about a fly.
So real quick, I have a question for John. I wanted to run something by you. So something that we've been thinking about a lot, that Adam and I have been like working over in our heads and just kind of processing, is the idea that in movies there's like these two tracks, what we call them, and one is the objective stakes track. It's like the physical, the characters moving towards their objective and overcoming obstacles, and there's all these stakes and blah blah blah. And then there's the character arc, like what we call the arc track, which is about the flaw and inner need and theme and all those ways that characters change over the course of the movie, and how in an ideal world those tracks will be so interwoven that you can't separate them. And something that you said, I think, just made sense to me, which was basically connecting them through motivation in a lot of ways. So like if your flaw or inner need or that whole mess is what's motivating your objective, then seems like a strong way to help make sure that those two mesh, like that you've not just tacked a random flaw, like, oh, they're arrogant, onto the top that doesn't actually matter within the story and their obstacles and like what the stakes are and their objective, so that it's woven in if it's the motivation. I was just, does that make What do you think about
I absolutely. Yes, I think you're on the right track. I also think one of the things that's a little complicated about this, or maybe not, maybe just interesting, is that keep in mind that the protagonist, not unlike ourselves, is not aware of the flaw, or not
or the inner need.
Or the inner need. Yes, exactly. So they're not aware. This is why I called. I don't know. How many times have you heard that? I don't know why I called. I don't know why I got in touch with you. Well, no, you do. You maybe not owning it, but your character does. So they're not. Alexi, is this tracking? So they're not aware. What is my inner need? My inner need is I'm calling you because I think I can get some cash out of your pocket. But if you ask the character will say, I'm calling you because, I always liked you and I think you're a great person and I think I'd love to hear from you. Well, no, that's not true. What you do is want to get your hands on the guy's wallet. So, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm being a little cynical, maybe. I don't know. No, I'm not. That's true. But
no, it is. Yeah.
No, it's true. And I feel like, so the flaw tends to be something that people might be like loosely aware of at some point. Like they might, but then the inner need is just typically, remember you telling me this, John, is something that they're like, that's completely out of their realm of awareness. Like they might not be ready to accept that they're selfish and like, because they hate their siblings and all these things. Like they might think that they're being reasonable or like have that kind of buried, but the inner need to be like loved by their family is not something that they are ready at all to understand at the beginning of the film.
They need the journey of the film to realize that.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think you could say safely, I can say it for me. I'm not saying probably but most of us probably aren't as good as we think we are. So that their flaws in there for all of us, it's nature. So, I'm great. I'm a great guy. I'm empathetic. I'm sympathetic. I'm kind. I'm generous. Nah, I was in line just coffee this morning. Really, here again, I just steal his shit all the time. But I'm in line and I'm standing in line and I'm like, oh shit. And these guys, these young boys, they're, well, young for me. Anyway, these boys in suits, they're all in suits and ties. And I'm thinking, that's funny because they don't. And then I realized that they got their little stickers on. They're Stern students. So they're going,
of course they are.
Right? They're going to NYU business school. I'm like, oh, yeah, you fucking. So you got your nice blue suits on. And man, they're talking and they're jazzed up and they're going to. And so, and it cost a lot to go to NYU and all that and jazz, and to buy your nice new blue suit. And so, and this one guy's really working it, man. He's like the dude. And I'm watching him and he's two people ahead of me. I'm so terrible that I do. This is my flaw, Adam, but this is again, another one.
But it's, it's also your strength,
So I jockey for position. I kind of move around. I jockey for position. Because I want to see. Does anybody want to take a guess at what do I want to see?
So you're moving around for a
I move and position myself.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what size tip he'll leave. Right?
See, now that's an interesting character right there. The guy who like wants to know what size tip.
Adam's flipping it back.
And by the way, this stays through it. This is me, man. It's like all day. That's all I'm doing. So I jockey around and get this dude. He's got the fucking cufflinks. He's got it all going on. He's a beauty. And I mean, nothing wrong. I mean, he's fine. Sure. But $1, $2, or $3 that you can, you punch in, that you. He leaves the smallest tip he can leave.
Not so fancy.
So I thought really, I mean, that was just, I was fascinated by that. Maybe I'm alone here, but I mean, is that,
So John,
because just one moment out of that, he showed us who he was by what he did. And there's a
Yeah. That. Oh,
right?
sorry.
No, that's it. Keep going.
No, you go.
He showed us who he was by his choice, his actual thing he did.
And that's where you know a character, not by what they say, it's by their action. That's Fitzgerald. That's F. Scott Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald said you know a character by their action. So that guy who, if you tapped him on the shoulder and, outside Think Coffee, whatever it's called, and said, hey, you're a great guy, right? He said, man, I'm a great guy. I'm successful. I'm smart. I got into Stern, NYU. I'm killing it. And I'm generous. And by the way, I'm not condemning the guy. I left $1, the cheapest, the least, but Adam, yeah, you're right. I mean, his action speaks to who he is. As my action, jockeying around to see what kind of tip speaks to who I am.
So can I take a leap for a second? I know Lexi has a thought. I just want to make a statement. So like we're all kind of describing like interior descriptive elements of like, this is a flaw, this is a underneath, this is how you make a character. But I think like a good litmus test for like if a character arc works or if it's good is to look at the choices somebody makes in Act 1 and compare those to the choices they make in Act 3. And the choices they make in Act 3 should depend on the inner need. Like it should be something they would have never done in the beginning of the story. Like right. Especially in the final fight, especially.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they would never have made that choice. The choice they made in Act 3 was not who they are in Act 1. My guy at Think Coffee leaves the $4 tip in Act 3.
And that's kind of the opening and closing theory of opening and closing images, like where you see one thing at the beginning through like one lens, and then at the end of the journey we see the same image but things are different now because they've resolved their flaws. Like that sort of approach to opening and closing images I think ties into what Adam's saying about like now you're doing something you would have never done at the beginning. You know what else it reminds me of is Saving the Cat. Showing who you are through your action at the beginning. But I guess it would be revealing Flaw. So more like not saving the cat.
Shows is
abandoning
kind of arbitrary because it's like, show that the protagonist is kind of a nice guy.
I know. I'm just saying like the action, like it's like a similar thing though, like where it's like showing who the person is in the beginning through their actions. And I just wanted to make sure I said Saving the Cat because
you know how I loathe that book.
No, we've covered that. It's
John, the thing I was going to tell you was not related to this, but is important because it's related to Stern. At one point, my friend was about to get a bunch of really short pink booty shorts printed with Stern across the butt just to ruin Stern's image and have everyone walk around wearing them just because.
That's a funny idea.
Isn't that great?
That's a great idea.
I know.
Should have done it.
I know.
The Stern.
Just because I'm sure they'd love it.
I love those boys in their blue suits.
Is very sometimes close to mad ideas too. So. But so
go ahead. Yeah. What do we got? Anything here?
We have a ton of great questions today.
We do.
Let me go back up to the top. Because I remember that I saw one that I wanted to pull. Here we go. Samantha says, should flaw and inner need drive the story?
No, the objective drives the story.
But if the objective,
flaw and the inner need are subliminal.
But the objective can be, I think this is like definitional too, like because you could say that it's tied together, like a character can pursue an objective because of their flaw sometimes too. So you could sort of do the domino effect. Right,
but if I understand, Samantha, what drives the story, and when I say story, I mean Act 2. What's driving that is pursuit of objective. So it's not pursuit of correcting flaw. It's not that.
Right, because the story wouldn't move forward if you just had flaw and inner need.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's the connection we were talking about before with what's connecting the two tracks, motivation. So like if the flaw is motivating the objective, it's still like really important and helpful to think mechanically of the objective is driving the story and the protagonist is the one who's driving towards it. But knowing in the background that it tends to be strongest and like most connected if the reason that they're motivated to do the objective is connected to their flaw and their need.
Yeah.
Like it should all be of a piece is what I'm saying. But you're completely right, John, that there wouldn't be the story would just be meandering and plotless and totally not be driving in any sense without an objective or stakes for the objective.
But it is all of a piece. Absolutely.
Conversely, though, if you just have characters achieving objectives without flaw or need, it becomes this sort of devoid, boring, that like it makes it so dull. Like we want to see flawed people transform. We don't want to just sort of see.
You don't want to see people doing things for the sake of doing them. No. It's like seeing them change is a lot of the fun. Here's a question from Merlin. I know me and Adam have an answer, but I'm curious, John, how does the character's flaw link to the theme?
So it does. It generally does, and generally it's the theme is the writer's kind of world view. It's the theme is if you live this way, your life and the world will be better. If you're altruistic, if you go from selfish to selfless. Thematically, that's what the writer is saying, and he or she is exposing that thematically through the character's resolution.
Mm-hmm.
That sounded
so, yes.
That sounded. By the way, I think that actually sounded smarter than I am. Maybe we should stop now. I think I peaked.
That's perfect.
I didn't even understand half of what I just. John, Kryptonite to Superman. Yeah, right. Save the cat. Yeah. Blake. Poor Blake. I shouldn't trash that book. Blake died. He died so young.
Apparently,
so here's the
really
thing.
Nice guy.
Oops, wrong one. So Ritlick says, is Andrew in Whiplash a flat character arc? And we've broken Whiplash. We break it in writing the scene, and we've broken it in class, right? And we don't consider that a flat arc. We consider him an anti-hero. So he has a positive flaw that he resolves by achieving a dark inner need. But his thing is like the thing that's keeping him from his objective is that he's not fully willing to commit himself and give up everything in his life for his drumming. Like he's still holding on to a bit of other things, anything else at all. And so that's mechanically his flaw. And his inner need is to be 100% committed to drumming and to like make this his life. And so
destroys him.
Even if it destroys him, yeah. And so he overcomes the positive flaw, which is him like having some sort of semblance of balance.
A normal life, yeah.
Yeah. And
very
then
Ayn Rand. It's very what's her Howard Roark. Fountainhead, yeah. Thank you.
So when that happens, when it's like a positive flaw, we tend to consider those anti-hero stories.
Yeah.
Or tragedies.
Yeah. Like the Godfather.
And also that what?
Like The Godfather. Michael's a war hero. He ends up turning into his father. Like in the first time we meet him, he says, "That's my family, Kay. That's not me." It literally ends with him shutting the door under her after lying to her.
Bigger monster than his father ever was. Oh, it's just a great. By the way, there's a very So it's you're right. I mean, don't get me started on Godfather, but that first shot, that two with him and what's his wife's name? Elaine. What's his wife's name?
Kay.
Kay. And and he's still in his army uniform. He's in browns, and they're all in darks. And he's like, "That's my family. It's not me." And then, as Adam just said, and then at the end, he's in dark, and he's in that dark room, and he's become the great monster.
is this Merlin says he hugs his father and then he goes back on stage. I think
So in
that's
the
him
screenplay,
saying goodbye, right? Like that's
Well,
basically him being like, I acknowledge that you're an option, but no, and
No.
completely
he
throwing
does say
everything
no to
away.
his father's worldview. And in the screenplay, it actually explicitly says in the last lines when, not that that matters because the movie's what matters, but the screenplay literally says the father has a look of despair on his face at like what his son's become. Like,
Beautiful.
there. It's there.
Beautiful.
Like, he
It's
didn't choose
beautiful.
him. He
By the
chose
way, I
him.
mean that. Yeah, I mean it's such a I mean I love the movie, but it's such a romantic point of view. That you're willing to sacrifice. It's the pact with the devil. It's great, but yeah, it's. I would argue it's a little immature, but that's just me.
But I think that's part of the idea too, is like that worldview. Like, I feel like they point, I think you're right, but I also think they do point the idea of that, like, this is kind of a stupid, like, unbalanced for what? For one
For
moment
what?
of glory on
Yeah.
stage,
For what?
right? But because we're in it, it's such the point of view is so close to him. We're taking on, the camera sort of takes on I think the point of view of like, this is everything because it's everything to him, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I love these. I mean, you guys are doing this is great work because the detail, it's the minutia, it's the you said, but what did you really say? That's where the richness is. But before everybody got here, Adam was talking. We were, as you heard me probably ad nauseum talk. My wife runs a dance company, and she was just doing auditions a couple of weeks ago. And there's a really good dancer, male dancer, that was going to audition. And so she said, these are the times of the audition. And he wrote back and said, what are the times again? So then she gave him the times again. And he said, yeah, I'm not sure I can make those times. So then she said, well, do you have is there something would work better? Maybe we can make some adjustments to the schedule. And then she didn't hear back from him at all. And then the night before the audition, he said, maybe I can make it. So my wife was laughing. And I said, he don't want to be in a company. Fuck him. He's out. And she said, yeah, he's out. Because it was at least 5 emails. And so what the kid was really saying was, I'm ambivalent. And by the way, his message, when he told his roommate that my wife said, sorry, we'll full up. He said to his roommate, you know what that bitch did? So he didn't say, I screwed up complete. Is this making sense to you guys? I mean,
It is.
It's just beautiful when you watch it unravel. But he didn't, Adam, to your point, I mean, he didn't understand his flaw was that he was sending a message loud and clear. And he's a long way from coming in terms with the message he was sending.
John, I can't tell if the way you look at the world is like the most healthy or the worst, because people are just like absolutely sucking and you're like, wow, what can we take from that?
In full defense of me and my flaws, I will say, and I think I said it a moment ago, what always strikes me is how the fragility. That's what always, because that kid who screwed up and didn't get into the company, in 6 months or 5 weeks or 10 years, he's going to have a head slap moment. Mm-hmm. And that's hard, man. That's I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I have a question I wanted to bring up from our audience. So Alexander asked, I asked him to elaborate. Thank you for elaborating. So he was basically asking if to understand Flaw, is it more helpful to think of it as like a bad point of view? Like instead of just something like an attribute, like arrogant or selfish or, I don't know, lazy, instead thinking of it as a bad point of view, if that's helpful. And I think yes. I know that Adam, that fits a lot with what you've been saying about about making it a statement of what they believe, like making it something in their own words about their belief.
I mean, I have my opinion on this, but
let's hear it.
My opinion is Flaw. First of all, I don't want to say that this is the only way to think about this, but I think it's a really useful way of thinking about it, is that Flaw should be a lie that the protagonist tells himself. And I like to articulate it in like a powerful sentence that really tells you what their damage is. Like the example Alexander was bringing up in Finding Nemo, like, my son can't protect himself. I have to protect my son for him. You know, like the world's dangerous and he can't survive in it. Like that's his belief that funds, even though his son's old enough to go on his own. And when his son does get captured, like it defines everything about himself. Until the end, he has to trust his son to solve the main problem. I forget. His son does the biggest, like he makes a choice. No, Nemo's going to do this, and I'm going to let him be his own fish. Like so the way I would just to recap, not to get too detailed, framing it as like a false belief the protagonist tells themselves, like a lie they tell themselves, and then the inner need is the truth that sets them free. Mm-hmm. But that can be as varied as it can. Like the lie could be something positive, like people are wonderful and I should trust them no matter what. And the inner need could be like, some people are bad and you need to keep your eyes open, you know, like that could be a journey. I don't know if that's the story you want to tell. And maybe this goes back to the other ideas. Like you could sort of say that you can connect those ideas to theme easily. But like, I think the reason I'm being careful about this language is that I want to say that this is not the only way to get there. This is just a way to think about it. Mm-hmm. Like, and at the end of the day, what matters is that you go deep and you really understand who people are. This is just one way of doing it.
Yeah, that's yes, going deep. And again, some of this just comes with getting older and more mature and having seen more of the world, so that you have a broader vision and have met so many people, you know, and experienced so much. But I do want to say, off a slightly different tangent here, just for a second. I was making some notes earlier when I knew this is where we were going to talk about today. Be careful that when you're designing this, let's just say with the protagonist, but with all of your characters, but let's just with the protagonist, when you're designing that character, that, you know, you're the god, you're writing, you're deciding all that, you're making all these choices, and make sure that the choices you make ultimately will serve the story. So you know, to make a early choice that the protagonist is a teacher or a Wall Street, and then to stay locked into that when in fact it doesn't serve story, will cripple you. It will turn you inside out, because all of those choices. I don't know why I keep going back. Well, because it's great, but you know, Richard III is the brother of the king. If he were anything different, it wouldn't design that. The story wouldn't track. He's disfigured. If he were healthy and handsome, it wouldn't track. So all of those choices you make, be flexible as you're designing them. And that's why I'm such a big advocate of, doing composite character. Is you pull a little bit from here and there and everywhere. You pull these pieces, but the choice you make, he or she has to serve story. And students they get locked in. I love this character. But Mr. Warren, I love this character. And he has to be a dentist. Why? Because I like my dentist. Nobody likes your dentist. No, that didn't track because nobody likes your dentist. No, it's not fair. But you know what I'm saying? And then, I mean, Walter White's a great example of that. He teaches chemistry. If he taught history, the show doesn't work. If he taught, I don't know what, woodwork.
Everything has to be of a piece.
Everything is of a piece. He teaches chemistry so he can cook meth.
Can people hear my voice better?
Yeah, that sounds better to me.
Okay. There's a
Here's
question down here. Oh yeah, sorry.
From Merlin.
Yeah, this one.
Does the protagonist's false belief always make them a social outsider?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No.
Like, it depends with the false belief could be, I have to stay with the pack. If I'm not conforming, I'm not safe, right? Like, it could be anything. Like, it can be it's just a way of thinking about character, and it can be as flexible as you are. So if you're not flexible about how you see the world, no characters you make are going to be. So like, this is just a way of thinking.
And by the way, if we missed anyone's question, please feel free to repost it because it's a little difficult for me to scroll back up and find them. So we're not skipping questions on purpose. Just please repost it.
Oh, that's a very nice comment. Thank you.
And Dilla's doing great. I think I sent you where he is doing the thing with Netflix in South Africa. I showed you his interview. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing great
amazing
stuff. I know. Let's see. So
there
John,
was a point above. Sorry, Alexi, go.
I was just going to ask a random question. There's something here.
Yeah, there is. Abdullah brought up that character arcs don't always just belong to the protagonist. Like, you can have other characters who change in your story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you want the other characters, the antagonist, to be as richly realized, as your protagonist. That's where it all starts to, really take off.
It really does seem to be like a recurrent. Oh, sorry, Alexi, you go. Sorry.
The classic example that we always give when we talk about how there can be many other arcs is Little Miss Sunshine. How there is all of these flawed characters together, and they all do have their own journey and their own transformation their own ways. It doesn't make them the protagonist because that's more defined by who's taking. It's defined by a lot, but in this case, you can tell who it is by who's choosing to act, who's driving the action. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm watching a series now that I recommend. It's very dark, but it's really well. Did somebody have a question? Did I just?
What series do you recommend?
The one we just did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm watching a series. It's very dark, but it's very good. We've just finished the first season. It's called Startup. It's on Netflix. And there are multiple characters and character arcs. And you all can empathize with my wife, because this morning I said to her, can you imagine what it must be like to live with me? I said, who is the protagonist in that show? And the reason we've been married so long is she didn't just go, oh shit, shut up. She actually entertained that question. And I know you're all sitting there going, your poor wife. And yeah, I know it's right. But there is like Little Miss Sunshine. There is one person. We're following multiple arcs, and each episode, sometimes there is a protagonist for the episode. Mm-hmm. But in the overreaching theme of season one, there is one protagonist. And I know it's kind of, I'm speaking, hypothetically, because you probably haven't seen it, but anyway, it's a good show. And yeah,
there's some people here who say they love it.
Oh yeah,
so
it's really good.
We've been talking a lot about TV lately, and so this would be great to hear from you about. How does a character arc work in TV?
Ron Darcy, yeah, he's really well written. What did you say?
How does a character arc work in TV?
How does a character? Yeah.
Well, normally there is not closure. So the objective has to keep. There's no closure, so you can't really obtain it. Walter White gets cash at the end of the pilot, but it's not enough. He's the ultimate anti-hero, right? It's never going to be, So, so the character arc is generally not resolved, because you need to keep going and going and going. And,
although I will make an amendment in limited series.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Ending, they are structured more like just a really long movie.
They're a long. I'm sorry. Yes, they're a long movie. What's the one? There are a couple that I love. I mean, there are a bunch of them that I love.
Fleabag is great.
It's so good.
So good.
Queen's Gambit.
So good.
There's so many.
Queen's Gambit is just a long movie, really.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
If you look at it, it's just a long movie.
Freaking, I love limited. I feel like it's such a fun thing that people get to play with now, and it's kind of like.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Yeah.
Because you can really go deep. You can really spend an episode just talking about that one moment from their childhood, right? And then, but like still have a definitive ending. Like one of the frustrating things about like old TV shows, especially, is like they were all procedural and like it's all just inherent. Like CSI, you're never going to get character resolution ever from anybody. Like if anything, like actually it was one of the reasons I stopped watching House. Like even I loved that show back when it was airing. Was like, okay, I don't give a fuck about your Vicodin anymore. Like, get over it. Like,
yeah,
that's a real thing.
I feel like in TV, we talk sometimes, if you're not doing a limited series, it's more like these characters have, instead of an arc, they're having like a gradual slope. So like the person who they are in season 4 is not the person who they were in season 1. They've evolved, but it's been a really gradual slope, and it does not mean that they're like a resolved individual.
And there should never be a feeling in like the average television show, even if you reach the end of a season, it should never reach the feeling that like, oh, they've solved all their problems and everybody's singing Kumbaya. Like Succession is a great show. I don't know if you've watched that, like amazing show, but like every like mini objective in that show feels life or death and fundamental. And these people are just so fucked up. It's never going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've got Succession. I really love the series. They've figured out how to. It works, but they figured out that almost every episode. I think I've only seen are there 2 seasons, Adam, or maybe 1? I don't know.
There are 2, but the third one is
coming.
Greenlit. Yeah, it's coming.
But you'll see that they always need a round table get together where they can fight. And so the dining room table of the father's apartment, they can't do that. So they sometimes move them to like a ship, a yacht off the Riviera, here, there, but they still go back to this table. And you kind of, the producers must go, oh my God, we're spending so much money just to change tables. Anyway.
So, John, I think a series that I am curious for you to see that I think you will like is called Undone. Have you ever heard of it? Yeah, it's completely rotoscoped, which is really interesting, but it's about like, it's complicated. It's like one of those that's like hard to talk about, but it's rotoscoped and they use animation really, really well to tell this story, and it has like a great cast. It's one that I want to force people to watch in Coffee.
Undone. Okay, I'll put it on the list. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So here we go. Here's a question from Ritwik. I'm confused about something. If a character has 2 flaws and both are to be resolved as the story progresses, one flaw is personal and one is professional, would you call the story unfocused? Yeah.
Yeah. I would. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I would say it's because they have to complement. It's one flaw.
Mm-hmm. It would be like you can have a flaw with many symptoms. Like you can be arrogant and it shows up in a bunch of different things you do.
Personally and professionally. Yeah.
And
it's still arrogance.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's still the same thing. It's like they can't be like arrogant in here and then like struggling with shyness over there and not have it be cohesive.
But even then, it
permeates everything they do.
It would be something deeper that has to do with vulnerability, probably. Like like my father never loved me, so I have to take love out of the world, right? And so like I have to show like, right, but like, and the arrogance professionally or personally would be a symptom of a greater like lacking in their life. Like that's just me trying to push it deeper, right? Because because you never want to just write arrogant ever. Like you have to go deeper, and it's better to even if it's wrong, even if you end up finding a different reason that's better, you should at least try to go deep from the beginning. Like don't just write as a placeholder arrogant. Like no. Like what's the person's damage? How are they fucked up?
What's their damage is a really good line. That's a really good point of view. What is their damage? But go back to this question again. Is the flaw, the single flaw, permeates their professional and their personal life. It permeates everything they do, but it's still it's the flaw.
But all these other people, I would say Undone is like Merlin likes it, Illa likes it, Alexander likes it.
I'll watch it, Alexi. I'll watch it. Fine.
See, Alexi here, Alexi's flaw, she needs confirmation.
I have fully admitted that. I thrive. My happiness is based on the approval of others. And I embrace that.
And she's not defensive about it, which I think is really a positive thing. I mean, I don't know if anybody else is getting that, but maybe. Adam, can you help? Adam, can you help at all?
Let's just talk about screenwriting.
You smartly jumped out of that.
Let's talk about screenwriting. Like I think to think of Flaw.
Everybody likes Undone. Yeah, go ahead.
It's Flaw with a capital F. It's like dramatic flaw. It's not just their flaws. It's like what is their dramatic flaw? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Awareness is the first step.
That it is.
Self-awareness. Yeah.
Just will I ever take the second step? That's the real question. Probably not.
It's early.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, so John, when you're building a character, and like, what are some checks, or like when you're building a story, basically, and you're and you're ready to go to pages, and like you think you're good to go, what are some things that you might look for to make sure that your flaw, your inner need, and all that stuff is strong enough, or like more connected enough to your story, or like what are some things that you would look for to make sure that everything was in place the way it was supposed to be? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And unfortunately, my answer is it's not glib. I don't mean to be glib or romantic about this, but there's a moment when you know that person. There's a moment when they are real to you. And sometimes, Alexi, when I start to write dialogue, I know this is what he says. I know this is his cadence and his rhythm, and I know him. And it's kind of a vague answer, but there is this. And you start to really, again, a little romantic, but you start to really, even if they're flawed, you start to really care about them. You start to really, really love them. That's why, no matter how bad their behavior is, it's so founded and rooted in reality that you understand and have empathy for their horrific behavior. And that's when you know that person, and you understand that their terrible behavior comes from a very authentic place.
You have to empathize with everybody.
You empathize, and you go, okay, you're an asshole, and it's for good reason.
Yeah. You're doing your actors a favor too. I remember Emilia Clarke with Daenerys at the end of Game of Thrones. She gave some interviews talking about how difficult that was as an actor, because the thread got lost. Because like you have to be able to understand, maybe not necessarily agree, but you have to be able to understand where their terrible behavior is coming from. Like you have to be able to find that track, go with it. And that at that point in the script, she couldn't justify it. Like she couldn't understand why these actions are being chosen. So it's I think that it's interesting too how much it's important to, it's not just important to like the story and you reading it, but it really affects how good of a performance someone can give later. Like it impacts everything about it.
Yeah, I mean it's that, yeah, it's you know, I contain the multitudes. Mm-hmm. It's you know, Ned Beatty died not too long ago. Ned Beatty, I think he won an Oscar for Network maybe. And I was really lucky. I got to work with Ned Beatty one time. If I told the story, I probably told the story. But anyway, and he's a terrific actor and nice guy. We were having lunch one day, and he was telling me, I said, "Where are you from originally?" He said, "I'm from Kentucky." And I was,
is he?
Yeah. Ned Beatty was from Kentucky, and he said, "I'm pretty sure I had that right." Anyway, and he said, I said, "Well, how'd you get into the movie business?" And he said, "I stumbled into an acting class, and I realized that it was a venue for me to realize all the people that were in my head." Mm. And I said, "What do you mean by that?" Because I kind of knew. And he said, "Well," he said, "I knew that I was a thief and a killer and a homosexual and a pervert and a stalker." He said, "I knew all of those." To sit with this guy at lunch and have him just open himself, and I was sitting there, jaw dropped, and he said, "I knew all of those people were in here." And he thought, shit, acting is going to give me a chance to express them all and not go to jail. And I thought, wow, that is a great line.
Extra.
Yeah, right. And it was really like illuminating. So as writers, we should have the same "I am the multitudes" approach. All of the we Adam, you said empathize. We understand your horrific behavior. We understand that character's behavior because it's in us. It is. I mean, I know a lot of you are going to knee jerk at that, and I'm old. You just have to trust me on this one. It's all in there. Don't act on it, but and that's the beauty about being a writer. You can, like as Ned Beatty said, you can explore it and express it, and you don't go to jail. Hopefully.
So
you're right.
One more idea.
He is from Louisville. I googled it.
One more idea.
Where's he? What? Wait, was that right?
Yeah, he's from Louisville. So that's why.
Louisville or Louisville or Louisville.
It's Louisville.
Louisville. It is not Louisville or whatever is happening over here.
That's like saying Houston Street and not Houston.
Houston
right?
Street. Right.
Oh, Houston
But
Street.
One more thing I want to talk about on this subject before we have to go, which is really, I think, relevant to pretty much everybody who starts writing. They don't write protagonists who actually have flaws, even if they think they do. Maybe John, sort of maybe I speak on that phenomena, of young people writing themselves into stories or their vision of themselves because they don't honestly see how fucked up they are.
That's right. So that's what I said earlier, that we're all not quite as good as we think we are. So if I write, my version of this character is much more appealing than he really is. And I know I do this too. Forgive me for doing this, but I just, it's my best way to relate this thing. 2 weeks ago, I had lunch with this old friend of mine, and his wife died 4 years ago, and she died of cancer, and she was sick for 18 months. 18 months she was diagnosed, and 18 months she was ill, and then she passed away. And excuse me. And Bill said to me, I said, geez, 18 months, it's a long, I mean, sometimes longer, but anyway, that's rough. And he said, yeah, I was so ready for her to be dead.
What a way to put that. Jesus.
I love that.
And I fucking knocked me out, man. I was like breathless. And I said, Bill, wow. He said, John, that's the truth. And I thought, you know that because that is the truth. Now, I don't think it was part of his eulogy at the funeral, but he got to the core of it. And that's gutty. So when you have the guts to go that stark, that brutal with your truth, then you're onto something. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's like tied to the idea of telling truth. But Alexa, you go.
So sometimes I think too that people, especially in the beginning, people try, but don't quite have yet the emotional awareness of themselves to push it to a place that becomes authentic. Like, even like this is something I've seen with people like writing about like really like dark stuff. It's like, even if you personally know about those dark things, you are still just as likely to fall into the cliches that everybody of like the way everybody else writes about it.
That's right.
Because you aren't emotionally ready to really explore your experience or like your take on it. So like even if you do know about this personally, sometimes it can come across like you're just writing a cliche because it's hard. I think that happens with Flaw too. It's like if you're writing yourself into a story, which people tend to do with their first script, I think. And like you're acknowledging like, no, this character is arrogant, but you aren't really ready to figure out what that looks like and like why that's so messed up and like why that's not right. You fall into the like superficial cliches of how arrogance looks in all the other movies I've seen. And I like that. I think that kind of gets at your question, Adam.
Definitely. I mean, my opinion on this, I think it comes down to this: flaws are interesting. Characters who don't have flaws just aren't interesting. Like, you would never choose a character in a story who's already embraced the inner need, because like they're never going to have behavior that's like gets at what you were talking about, John. Truth. Like, we want to see flawed people work things out. Like, we want to see characters who really want things but don't know how to get it try, because that's just more interesting than I want this and I know exactly how to get it in an emotionally adjusted way. That's not interesting. Like, we want to see human behavior that's like raw, and like Walter White doing the same objective but without his like Napoleon complex is boring. Like, it's human rawness that's interesting. The fact that he feels he deserved the Nobel Prize, but his partners got what he always wanted. Like, that tension of he wants greatness is what makes that interesting. Like, that's the undercurrent behind everything. So like, Flaw is an opportunity to be interesting. And I don't just mean interesting, I mean compelling on like a base human level. Like, we watch people who are fucked up. What's their damage? The damage is what's interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's what you're absolutely right. That's why we'll watch them. That's why you're in a conversation with somebody and you're going, wow, this is really fascinating. If only you knew what you're revealing. And they don't, generally speaking. And I don't. I mean, I'll cop to that. So,
John, your flaw isn't just that you're nosy or that you want to like go behind to see how much money the guy left to the tip. It's the fact you actually did it. The fact you actually looked over your shoulder. You actually had this. You didn't care about how you were. You like went like, that's a choice. Like a character in a situation, them having the thought like, oh, who are they? But the person who actually follows through to look over somebody's shoulder, see how much they tip. That's a choice. That's an action.
Yeah. And Adam, can I tell you, this won't surprise you at all. I did not hesitate. I did not. All I was just moving so that he wouldn't see me so I could get him raw.
So, but John, that's so interesting. So there are two different characters right there. There's the character who's really self-conscious about having to look, but they still have to look, and they're looking over their own shoulder to see if somebody's looking at them, look at the guy. Of course, nobody is. And then there's the character who just doesn't give a shit, who has no awareness of the social, you know, like who doesn't care if he's looking over his shoulder. You know, it's, I think just thinking that way, like going deep gets you to those sort of understanding of nuanced human behavior.
Remind me to never be in a conversation with John. He listens too closely. he'll know.
Yeah, I think it's probably accurate, but yeah, no, listen, it's, it's fascinating. By the way, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's just I mean, that's why you always want, I'll say this before we close. That's why it's part of your job as a writer to experience life. And I know that sounds cliched and broad and everything, but it is. You the more you experience and the more you see people and meet people and see people's interactions, and the broader your understanding is. That's why we could never figure Shakespeare out, because when he quit, he was so young. We could never. How in the hell did he know that deeply what human nature was? Nobody knows. Nobody can figure that out. But as writers, you're also young. That's the privilege and the excitement about it. I think. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for everybody.
Yeah, it was.
It's fun to be back. I miss you guys, huh?
There's one more question I want to get at before we close.
Okay.
From Taskeen.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah, so basically, flaws come from deeper nature of the past and internal beliefs and all of the things. But how do you actually get that on the page? You get that by characters doing things because of their flaw. It's what they do in every scene. Oh, his dad left him. We don't actually need to have him say, my dad left me, so I'm going to take it out on you, or my insecurity, whatever it is. But they make choices because of that. They make choices and then they do things because of their flaw. And every scene with your main characters, they should be doing things because of their flaw. If you have 5 scenes in your story where your protagonist, especially early in the story, where your character's doing things that have nothing to do with their emotional journey, you should cut those scenes probably, right? I don't know. It should be all of a piece.
Yeah.
Would agree. So I think, John, we should do this more. You should come back and just talk with us about a subject in depth
next month.
this. I think
familiarity breeds contempt.
That's true. That's true, I guess. Yeah.
No, I'd love to. Once school starts again, I'm kind of a more regular, more rhythm to my day to day, and I'm in town. So yeah, we'll do it. I hope this has been helpful. It's been a lot of fun.
People seem to have gotten a lot out of it. So that's
I hope so. Okay.
Yeah, I think people. And then I want to real quick say what's next week. Next week, me and Adam are looking at 3 Pixar films. We're looking at Toy Story, Inside Out, and Coco. And we're looking at how Pixar handles arcs in those 3 films. So more about character arcs and trying to look more closely at examples next week. So thank you, everybody, so much for coming. And
thank you guys for having me.
We'll see you
Good
then.
to see you. Okay.